My name is Emily, and I'm 30 years old. I have a 10-year-old son named Jake. I'm married for the second time to John, who's 38. We also have a 1-year-old baby together, and life is moving forward, but the journey to get here wasn't simple. I met John 6 years ago when I was 24. He was 32, and we connected through phone calls, spending weeks talking before we finally met. From the start, I felt a spark. When we met in person, I knew we had something real. John had never been married and didn't have kids, but I had been married before, and I had a son from that relationship. My first marriage didn't work out, but with John, everything felt different. He made me happy, and he seemed like the man I was meant to be with. As we got closer, John shared more about his past. He told me about his previous girlfriend, someone he had lived with for 4 years, but they never married. He said he was the one who ended the relationship. But then there was the girl he had loved before he went into the army. She was his first love, someone he had been with when they were just kids, around 16 or 17. John loved her deeply, but when he left for the army, she didn't wait for him. She moved on, and he was left heartbroken. His mother later told me that he never really got over her. I couldn't help but wonder about her. I wanted to know more, but John didn't talk about her much. Sometimes, though, I could see it in his eyes, a kind of sadness whenever the topic came up. I didn't want to ask him too many questions about the past, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that maybe he still cared for her. I decided not to dwell on it too much. I wanted to focus on building our future, not getting stuck in his past. One day, John invited me to his apartment. I was excited to see where he lived. When we got there, though, I was shocked. The apartment was small, old, and needed a lot of repairs. It didn't feel like a place someone was proud of. The furniture was worn, and everything seemed out of place. I asked him why his apartment was in such poor condition, and he just shrugged, saying he had lived with his parents for years and didn't have time to fix things. Later, I found out from his mom that John had spent a lot of time drinking beer with his friends in the park and bringing different girls over for one-night stands. It was a side of him he hadn't mentioned. It made me question what I really knew about him. On New Year's Eve, John and I decided to go to the city center to see the lights. As we were walking around, John suddenly walked away from me and Jake, standing a little distance from us. I looked around and saw that he was staring at a woman. She was with her husband, and it hit me. This was his first love. I felt a rush of emotions. Why was he standing so far away? Why was he watching her like that? My heart sank. I started to wonder if he still had feelings for her. I tried to push the thought away, but it didn't sit right with me. I asked John about it later. "Do you still love her?" I asked, trying to hold back my hurt. He was defensive, saying I was imagining things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe he was still attached to her. John kept bringing her up, asking about her life and what she was doing. He even spoke to her brother, wanting to know how she was doing. This bothered me. Why was he so concerned with her life when he had a family with me? His mother also talked about this girl, mentioning how much John had loved her and how heartbroken he was when she left him. Every time she spoke about it, it made me feel like I didn't matter as much as this woman from his past. John began to change. He started acting distant, withdrawing from me and Jake. He wasn't as talkative or as affectionate as he used to be. I tried to talk to him about it again. "Do you still love her?" I asked, hoping for some reassurance. But again, he told me I was imagining things. It felt like he was hiding something, and the more he denied it, the less I believed him. The truth was, I was scared. I loved John, but it seemed like he still loved her. I began to feel like I wasn't enough for him. I didn't want to be second best. I wanted to feel like I mattered, like I was the one he cared about the most. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of his first love. After a lot of thinking, I knew I had to make a decision. I sat down with John and asked him point blank, "Do you want to stay with me, or do you want to go back to her?" John was surprised, but his response didn't feel sincere. "I love you," he said, but I didn't believe him. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel like a priority. I made the hardest decision of my life. I left. I couldn't keep living in a relationship where I felt like I was always competing with his past. I needed to be with someone who would love me fully, someone who would put our family first. It was painful, but I knew it was the right choice. I couldn't keep wondering if I was second best.